What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. This time I have another Cutlass deck tech to show off. I've been doing a bunch of these on the channel where I go through my upcoming card game Cutlass and have a look at what some of the deck building looks like, put together some ideas for some mechanics to highlight, or things that I might feel are strong or fun, or some kind of archetypes that people might want to play when trying out the game. And this one here is a little bit different from most of the other kind of crewmate pirate focused lists that I've made, because the goal is to be really fast. We've got three main cards: the Spring-Heeled Looter, Feather-Fingered Safecracker, and Ambitious Deckhand. And all of them say claim a treasure through one way or another. And the goal is to try and play something each turn and claim a treasure with it, and activate as many things as you can and also claim a treasure. So that you're basically going turn one, get one treasure, turn two, you get two treasures, so you're on three, and then so on, so that you hit 7 before your opponent. Trying to be as fast as possible. But each of them have this clause called Raiding Party. And Raiding Party says if you have at least 3 crewmates in your tableau, then you are allowed to activate this effect. So you've got to get to 3 crewmates in your tableau. And the way that we do that is with Remnants of Skarshank. This little guy has the ability that says you may spend a construction point to return this card from your discard pile to your tableau. And what we're trying to do is get 2 of those into play and then play our thing with Raiding Party to start activating straight away. Otherwise, you're a bit slow. Otherwise, you're a turn behind and you're trying to get to 3 as quickly as you can. So the fastest way that we can do that is if you go second, you will have access to your construction step. You get 1 free construction point and you can spend that to play an event card. And our event of choice is Skeletal Salvage. This card says search your deck for 2 crewmates and discard them. So we would search for the 2 Remnants of Skarshank, put them into the discard pile. We would then have to discard 2 other cards from our hand to make the construction points to pay for the ability for Remnants of Skarshank to put him back into play. So our board state is now just 2 Remnants of Skarshank. And then going to our main phase, from our hand we play one of our 3 cost crewmates. It has Raiding Party on it. You have your 3 guys in play. They can activate and start getting you treasures straight away. The most unfortunate one of the 3 is the Feather-Fingered Safecracker, because it requires your opponent to have 2 banished cards. And it's unlikely that if you play him on the very first turn, they're already going to have that, even though they went first. It's unlikely. But we play Fell's Seer Maiden, because that will slowly banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck. So for every 2 Seer Maiden activations, Safecracker will get a treasure. Spring-Heeled Looter has potentially a similar problem, where you reveal the top card of your opponent's deck, and if it's not a crewmate, you claim a treasure. So if you're playing against a deck that's mono crewmate, it's not going to activate. But we have Ambitious Deckhand, where you banish 2 cards from your discard pile. And if you do, then you claim a treasure. So it's the most consistent one, because it's really easy to get cards in your discard pile, because you have to pay the discard cost to play your cards. So you'll always have kind of something in there. So best case scenario, Ambitious Deckhand on turn 1. Start getting treasures and trying to keep cards in your discard pile so that you can keep up that tempo. We have another, honestly, this deck has possibly the most spread when it comes to options in it. I put in a lot of like 1 and 2 ofs to deal with a couple of different specific things. We're playing 1 Scourge the Unkillable, because you can play Scourge from the discard pile as if he was in your hand. Which means that if you kind of have no cards in hand, you draw your 3 in your draw step for having no cards in hand, and you still can't really play anything relevant because we have a lot of things that cost 3. You won't have those 3 additional cards to discard, but you can play Scourge from your discard pile, and he will be able to activate your tableau. So still potentially letting you claim treasures, but not specifically playing new cards. And Cannoneer Slacker kind of does the same thing, because he allows you to play from the banished pile as if it was in your hand. So when you draw those 3 cards for having no cards in hand, you can discard all of them to play the Cannoneer Slacker. But Slacker has a different clause from our other ones, which is he requires the Eternal Greed, where you need 8 crewmates in your discard pile. So you are going to be trying to juggle with eating them all and banishing them with the Ambitious Deckhand, or filling up the discard pile so that Cannoneer Slacker can activate. We also have 2 Scarshank Dreadbeard, which has that same Eternal Greed clause, where he's going to play crewmates from your discard pile for you and fill up your tableau with more crewmates. And you kind of want to be using this to get Ambitious Deckhand into play, pretty much. Because it only activates once per turn, and it's really easy to lose Eternal Greed. Either you have to reset the deck because there's nothing left to draw, or you just banish too many cards out of that pile to get treasures because you care more about having treasures than you do about having Eternal Greed, funnily enough, that it can get turned off. But it is sort of like a tutor in a way that you can find the Ambitious Deckhand, get it into play, and get it happening. We've also got the Tide Skipper. So the Tide Skipper is interesting here because in that scenario where you draw the 3 cards in your hand, because you had no cards in hand, and you draw 2 things that cost 3, let's say Spring-Heeled Looter and Featherfingered Safecracker, and they could both potentially draw you a card or whatever. In activating the Tide Skipper with something like Scourge, with something, probably not Cannoneer Slacker, you'd have to discard too many cards. With something like Scourge, Tide Skipper can discard that crewmate from your hand to activate its effect without you having to have set up the board, like to be able to play it from your hand, or being able to have to turn it face up and pay all those costs. It is kind of a cost reduction, but it's once, right? So you'll have to find and draw more of them to be able to do it each time. And when the goal of the deck is to try and sometimes have 8 crewmates in the bin, then the Tide Skipper does actually help with that. We covered our events, but we do have 3 Rift Sealers. At the downside of being 1 turn slower, you can play the Rift Sealers to guarantee the Splitter Salvage is going to activate, get the Remnants into play, get you through that construction point ability, and then start playing your Treasure Gatherers. It's kind of like a consistency card. We're also playing the 1 Void Sign at midnight, which I think is a great one-off in every deck to help keep your sea monster in the game, because the sea monster chosen for this particular list is actually Tyler Ascendant Goddess, which says if you have no cards in your banished pile, claim a treasure, but if you have 20, shuffle them back in your deck, take an extra turn. We're banishing a bunch of stuff with the Ambitious Deckhand, potentially, with the 5 events that we have, which is 1/4 of the way there, right? If we're able to play all of them. So, especially if we're playing against an opponent that has cards like Fellow Seamaid and that is going to be banishing cards of our deck, we can get there pretty quickly. And taking an extra turn when you have so many things in play, let's say claim a treasure, is going to be backbreaking for your opponent. You should be able to just win the game on the spot. So the goal with the Taylor is I'm going to get to 20 cards, I'm going to find and play this card. And then we also have Thomas Darien the Stolen Sun to deal with our opponent's sea monsters, but it's also a crewmate, so it will help us get to Raiding Party. We've also got 1 Taylor the Seeker. Now, as I've been building more and more decks for this game, I've been thinking more and more in crewmate focused stuff. I should be playing 1 Thomas Daring, 1 Taylor, because if I come up against something like a Leviathan deck that's putting a lot of damage onto my things, Taylor's every activation of removing all the damage is going to actually be so valuable that it is kind of worth an inclusion. But you can also play stuff face down. So Skarshank is going to play crewmates from your discard pile face down with development time equal to its discard cost +1. And so Tile the Seeker is then able to turn that card face up. Now, that card is going to activate, but it will have damage on it, so it won't receive orders and activate in the future. It will be repairing instead. So you can then still get that activation if Skarshank hits an ambitious deck and Tyler says you still claim a treasure right now. And then on the next turn, I can potentially be trying to remove the damage from it so that when it receives orders, it does do it again. But it adds tempo, it makes it faster, more consistent. So I think that that is a great inclusion as well. But that's kind of the pirate deck list. Surely there's going to come to a point where we find more consistent ways of putting all these concepts together, because you can go pretty wide when it comes to your deck list. Unlike Magic the Gathering, where if I put red cards in a green deck, I can't play them. In Cutlass, you can play any of all of the cards in your deck. It's just how efficient it is at activating all of the things in your tableau. Because all of the red cards can activate each other, all of the crewmates can activate each other. But if I'm playing a red crewmate deck and a blue structure deck, none of those things overlap. So it's going to be hard for them to activate each other. So finding a balance that has all of the cards that you need to be able to win the game is what's really interesting, and the challenge to try and keep that synergy really high so that you can be activating exactly when you need all of those things. But I am obviously very excited about this game. I think Cutlass is going to be very, very fun. And I have got a free print and play. You can find it in the Discord, in the description. You can also play it for free online on Cockatrice if you can set that up. All of the instructions, details, downloads, everything is in the Discord, so go and check that out. But also on the channel, I've got a bunch of other deck tech videos like this. I've got a whole bunch of other how to play type stuff and some instructional things so you can get a feel for what the game's going to look like. And so you can come and join us in the Age of Steel.